kids. My name is Miss Smith. Welcome to Story Time. We are going to read a book today that's called The Quilt Story. Can you read that? The Quilt Story. You got it. The Quilt Story is a book about a little girl named Abigail who gets a quilt from her mother. And she loves this quilt, especially because it helps her through one of the most difficult times of her life. We'll find out what that is in just a minute. First, I want to talk about the letter Q. Did you hear it? We're talking about the letter Q. Yeah, the letter Q is a consonant in the middle of our alphabet that's kind of a copycat letter. Because if you know that K says K and W says W, then you'll be good at making letter Q sound because it copies those two sounds to say Qu, Qu, Qu. Can you do that? Qu, Qu, Qu. You got it. So I'm kind of making the K sound in the back of my mouth, and then I'm making the W sound as I push the air through my lips. I wonder, could we try it one more time and notice each of those sounds? Ready? Qu, Qu, Qu. Nice job, you got it. The sign language for letter Q, I'm sorry to tell you, is a little bit tricky. We're going to take our pointer finger straight out, our thumb straight out, kind of like the letter G, remember, like we're going to squish something, but don't do it. Keep them spread apart. That would be letter G. If we turn it down, now it's letter Q. We went from G to Q. Can you hold it down like that and say letter Q? Ready? Letter Q. Nice job. And remember that letter Q says qu, qu, qu. Can you bounce it forward and do that? Qu, qu, qu. Nice job. You got it. Okay, so let's read about Abigail and her qu, qu, quilt. Can you do that? Qu, qu, quilt. Because of course quilt starts with Q. Okay, let's find out what happens to her. A little girl's mother made the quilt to keep her warm when the snow came down long ago. She stitched the quilt by a yellow flame, humming all the time. And if she stitched it by a yellow flame, that means she made it by candlelight, which must mean they didn't have electricity or light bulbs like we do today, so this must have happened a very long time ago. She stitched the tails of falling stars, and she stitched the name Abigail. And I want to show you a picture of the quilt on the very last page. This is what it looks like. You can see she made stars and she added little tails to them to make them look like they were falling through the sky. She added birds and hearts and flowers all around the edges. And then across the bottom, she put the name Abigail. Can you read it? Abigail. You got it. And of course, she put 3 hearts because she loves Abigail. That's the quilt. Okay, now that we know what it looks like, let's finish finding out what happened to Abigail with her quilt. Abigail loved the quilt. She wrapped it round her in the quiet dark and watched the winter skies. Sometimes she saw a falling star. Hey, that's just like on her quilt. Her mom did falling stars. Sometimes Abigail played in the woods near her home. She had tea, her dolls had tea, and the quilt had tea all over it. Uh-oh. Because you can tell that the tea spilled. Was the quilt supposed to have tea? No, but it spilled on it anyway. Sometimes she pretended the quilt was a gown. She wore it to town on her horse. Clop, clop, clop. And it tore. So her mother stitched it up once more. Abigail had to take it to her and say, sorry it tore. Can you stitch it up? Sometimes she played hide and seek with her sisters. She laughed and cried, "Don't peek!" and hid under the quilt. And everyone found her because you can tell there's a person under there. So even though she's hiding and saying, "Don't peek," her sisters say, "We see you right there." Can you do it like they did? Ready? We see you right there. Yeah. Sometimes Abigail was sick. She sneezed and sneezed. Then she slept under the quilt, and she felt better. Because of course a quilt would keep you really warm and comfortable. I think I would like that if I was sick. One day, Abigail's family moved away across wide rivers and over a rock-hard trail. And you can see they're in little wagons being pulled by horses. They're moving very far away. The quilt went too, not stuffed in trunks with the blankets and clothes. It kept the little girls warm from the wild winds, warm from the rain, warm from the sparkling nights. So you can see all three of the sisters are wrapped up in the quilt now, not just Abigail, because it keeps them warm. They built a new house in the woods. Abigail's father built it with his hatchet. Chop, chop, chop. Can you do that? Chop, chop, chop. Good. He built her a new bed. Chip, chip, chip. Can you do it? Chip, chip, chip. Yeah, he's chipping away at the wood to make a bed. He made her a new horse, too. He worked until curly shavings covered the floor. So you can see it's a little horse made of wood, like a toy rocking horse. He worked until curly shavings covered the floor and everyone sneezed and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And Abigail felt sad. Everyone is glad to be in a new home and to have new furniture and new toys, but Abigail is sad? I wonder why. New house, new horse, new bed. Everything smelled of fresh chops and chips. Everything but the quilt. Oh, I think I see. So she's missing her old home. Everything just feels new and unfamiliar. The only thing that she still remembers and still feels comfortable with is the quilt. So her mother rocked her as mothers do, then tucked her in, and Abigail felt at home again under the quilt. She likes to wrap in it. Even if she's not outside being cold, she just likes the comfort of it. One day when the quilt was very old and very loved, Abigail folded it carefully and put it in the attic. Everyone forgot it was there. And if it says the quilt was very old and very loved, I think that must mean Abigail was very old too, because remember her mother gave it to her when she was a young girl. So we know that now Abigail has become an old woman. A gray mouse came and loved the quilt. Her babies were born on top of it. They grew fat and gray in the warm stuffing. When they got hungry, they ate a falling star. Look at them nibbling on that falling star. They think this is delicious. Can you say it like them? Ready? This is delicious. Good. A raccoon came and loved the quilt. She dug a hole in a corner with her black paws and hid an apple there. You can see the apple hiding in the corner. A cat came and loved the quilt. A patchwork cat. If it's a patchwork cat, it just means it has patches of different colors on it. Can you say patchwork cat? Ready? Patchwork cat. It rolled on the stars and stuffing spilled out like snow. Then the cat curled up in the snow and purred. Will you show me if you can purr? Ready? Good. The cat loves to curl up in the quilt. Kitty, kitty, called a little girl. She found her cat and she found the quilt splashed with patterns of sun. And at first when I looked at the little girl, I thought, hey, is that Abigail? Because of course she does kind of look like her. But remember, Abigail became very, very old, and this little girl is very young. So we know it's not Abigail. The little girl wrapped the quilt round her, and she loved it too. Hey, just like Abigail used to. Can you make it like new? She asked her mother. So her mother patched the holes. She put fresh stuffing in. She stitched long tails on the stars to swish across the quilt again. Just like Abigail's mother did the first time, she's making it fresh and new. One day, the little girl's family moved away across miles and miles of pavement and snaking gray highways. You can see the moving van and their car. They're moving to a new home. They found a new house, freshly cleaned, freshly waxed, freshly painted white. Which a lot of people might be excited to have a new house with new paint and it's freshly cleaned. They unpacked and unpacked all night, and everyone sneezed on cardboard dust and said, "Welcome home," and was glad. And the little girl felt sad. Isn't that just what happened to Abigail when they moved to their new home? Everything was too new and too unfamiliar, and she was sad. It looks like the same thing is happening to this little girl. Everything smelled of white paint and boxes. Everything but the quilt. So her mother rocked her, as mothers do, then tucked her in, and she felt at home again under the quilt. Can you see she's gone to sleep now? And she's sleeping so peacefully and so comfortably. And the little patchwork cat is too. She says, "I don't mind sleeping here either." And remember, the last page is the picture of the quilt. The one that's so beautiful, that was made so many years ago for Abigail. I love that sweet story. Okay, it's kind of tricky, but do you still remember letter Q? It started like a G. Point your finger, thumb straight out, and tip it down and say letter Q. Ready? Letter Q. You got it. And can you pretend that with your Q, you're pulling a quilt up over you and going kwa, 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 and just pull it up to your shoulders. Ready? Kwa, kwa, kwa. Nice job. You got it. Thanks for listening today. See you next time. Bye.